Maya took a deep breath as she stood outside the tall wooden doors of St. Mary's Church. Her hands were shaking, but not from the cold October wind. She looked down at her 8-year-old daughter Zoe, who was holding a thick manila envelope against her chest like it contained the most precious treasure in the world. "Mommy, are you sure we should do this?" Zoe whispered, her big brown eyes looking up with concern that seemed too mature for her age. Maya knelt down and smoothed her daughter's curly hair. The little girl was wearing her best dress, the navy blue one with tiny flowers that Maya had bought for her school's spring concert. It felt strange to dress up for something like this, but Maya wanted to look dignified. She wanted to show everyone that she wasn't broken, even though inside she felt like she had been carrying heavy stones in her chest for 3 long years. "Sometimes, sweetheart, we have to be brave to make things right," Maya said softly. She adjusted the collar of her own dress, a simple black one that made her feel strong and serious. "Your daddy needs to know the truth, and you deserve to have your daddy know who you really are." The church bells were ringing, and Maya could hear the soft music playing inside. She knew the ceremony had already started. Part of her wanted to turn around and walk back to her car, drive home to their small apartment, and pretend this day never came. But the envelope in Zoe's hands reminded her why they were here. 3 months ago, everything changed when Rosa called. Rosa had worked for Derek's mother Patricia for over 15 years, cleaning her big house and listening to her complaints about everything and everyone. Maya remembered Rosa from the early days of her marriage, back when Patricia would at least pretend to be polite when Maya visited. "Mrs. Maya," Rosa had said on the phone, her voice shaky and nervous, "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Mrs. Patricia, she did terrible things. She lied about you. She destroyed your marriage on purpose." At first, Maya thought it was some kind of cruel joke. But Rosa kept talking, telling her about recordings she had made, papers she had kept, and conversations she had overheard. Rosa explained how Patricia had been planning for years to get rid of Maya, how she couldn't stand the idea of her son being married to a black woman, how she was terrified of having a mixed-race granddaughter. She thought she was dying, Rosa had explained. Her heart problems got bad, and she got scared. She told me everything, thinking I would take her secrets to my grave, but I can't live with this anymore. That little girl needs her father, and he needs to know what his mother did. Now, standing outside the church, Maya felt the weight of all those secrets, all those lies and all those lost years pressing down on her shoulders. Derek was inside, about to marry Jennifer, a woman he had met just 8 months after their divorce was final. Maya didn't hate Jennifer. How could she hate someone who didn't know the truth? "Come on, baby," Maya said, taking Zoe's hand. "It's time." They pushed open the heavy doors and stepped inside. The church was beautiful, with tall stained glass windows that painted colorful light across the wooden pews. There were maybe 60 people there, all dressed in their finest clothes, all smiling and happy for the couple getting married. Maya and Zoe walked slowly down the center aisle. At first, only a few people noticed them. An elderly man in the back row turned and smiled, probably thinking they were late guests. But then more heads turned, and the smiles started to fade as people recognized Maya. She could see Derek at the front of the church, standing next to the priest in his black tuxedo. He looked older than she remembered, with some gray in his hair that hadn't been there 3 years ago. Jennifer was beautiful in her white dress, holding a bouquet of white roses, but it was Patricia who Maya focused on. Derek's mother was sitting in the front row, wearing an expensive-looking purple dress and a hat with a small veil. She had always been dramatic, always wanting to be the center of attention. When Patricia saw Maya and Zoe walking toward the front of the church, her face changed completely. The fake smile disappeared, and her eyes got narrow and angry. "What is she doing here?" Patricia said loudly, standing up from her seat. Her voice echoed in the quiet church, and now everyone was staring. Derek turned around and saw Maya for the first time in almost 2 years. His face went completely white, and he looked like he might fall over. Jennifer grabbed his arm, looking confused and scared. "Maya?" Derek said, his voice barely a whisper. What are you doing here? Where did you come from? Maya stopped walking when she was about 10 feet away from the altar. Her heart was beating so fast, she thought everyone could probably hear it. Zoe squeezed her hand tighter, and Maya remembered that her daughter needed her to be strong, right? Now, I'm sorry to interrupt your special day, Maya said, her voice carrying clearly through the church. She had practiced these words in her mirror at home, but saying them here, with all these people staring at her, felt completely different. But there's something everyone needs to know, something that should have been told a long time ago. You have no right to be here, Patricia said, her voice getting louder and more angry. This is a private ceremony. You're not welcome. Security should throw you out? Actually, I have every right to be here, Maya said calmly. She looked directly at Derek, trying to see some trace of the man she had once loved, the man who used to make her laugh until her stomach hurt, the man who had cried happy tears when Zoe was born. Derek, do you remember 3 years ago when you asked me if I was having an affair? Do you remember the photos your mother showed you, the phone records? The receipts from restaurants I supposedly went to with another man? Derek's face got even paler. Jennifer looked back and forth between them, clearly having no idea what was happening. Maya, please don't do this here, Derek said. Whatever you want to talk about, we can discuss it later. This isn't the time or place. When would be the right time? Maya asked. You won't take my phone calls. You barely let me see our daughter. Your lawyers make sure I can't get near you to tell you the truth. The truth? Patricia laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. The truth is that you cheated on my son and broke up this family. The truth is that you're a liar who can't accept that your marriage is over. Maya reached into her purse and pulled out a small recording device. It was old-fashioned, the kind people used to use for taking notes in college classes. She held it up so everyone could see it. The truth, Maya said, is on this recorder. Your mother's own words, Patricia. Her confession about what she really did to destroy our marriage. The church got so quiet that Maya could hear people breathing. Even the soft music had stopped playing. The priest looked completely lost, like he had never seen anything like this before in all his years of performing weddings. That's ridiculous, Patricia said, but her voice sounded different now. Less confident. I don't know what kind of lies you've made up, but no one here is going to believe your desperate attempts to ruin my son's happiness. Zoe stepped forward, still holding the manila envelope. She looked up at Derek with her big brown eyes, the same eyes he had, and said in her clear, brave voice, Daddy, Grandma Patricia lied about Mommy. She has been lying for a very long time. And we can prove it. The little girl's words seemed to hit Derek like a physical blow. He staggered backward, and Jennifer had to catch his arm to keep him steady. Maya pressed the play button on the recorder, and Patricia's voice filled the church, clear and unmistakable, saying words that would change everything forever. As Patricia's voice filled the church through the small recorder, Maya's mind drifted back to a time when everything was different, a time when she believed in fairy tales and happy endings, a time when Derek looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. She remembered their first meeting at college. It was during her junior year at State University, and she was running late for her psychology class. Maya had been juggling 3 jobs to pay for school, and that morning she had overslept after working a double shift at the campus diner. She rushed into the lecture hall, her books scattered in her arms, and bumped straight into Derek, who was coming out of the same classroom. Her papers went flying everywhere, and she felt her face get hot with embarrassment. But instead of being annoyed, Derek had gotten down on his hands and knees to help her collect everything. When he handed her the last paper, he smiled and said, I'm Derek, and I think you just made my boring economics class a lot more interesting. Maya had laughed despite her embarrassment. Derek had this way of making everything seem lighter, easier. He was tall and lanky then, with messy brown hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He didn't look like someone who came from money. But Maya would learn later that his family owned 3 successful restaurants in the city. They started dating slowly. Derek would walk her to her classes, carry her heavy textbooks, and bring her coffee during her long study sessions in the library. He was studying business, planning to take over the family restaurant someday, but he was also taking art classes because he loved to draw. Maya still had some of his sketches somewhere in a box. She couldn't bring herself to throw away. What Maya loved most about Derek was how he treated everyone the same. He was just as friendly to the janitor as he was to his professors. He helped other students with their homework, volunteered at the campus food bank, and never made Maya feel bad about having to work while going to school. When she told him she couldn't afford to go to expensive restaurants for dates, he said he preferred cooking for her anyway. The first time Derek brought Maya home to meet his parents was during their senior year. She had been nervous for weeks, changing her outfit 5 times and practicing conversations in the mirror. Derek's family lived in a huge house in the suburbs, the kind of place Maya had only seen in movies. The driveway was long and curved, lined with perfectly trimmed bushes. And expensive cars. Derek's father Robert had been kind but distant. He shook Maya's hand politely, asked her a few questions about her studies, and then disappeared into his office to take business calls, but Patricia was different. Maya could tell from the moment she walked in that Derek's mother had already made up her mind about her. "So you're the girl Derek has been talking about," Patricia had said, looking Maya up and down like she was examining something unpleasant. "He tells me you're studying to be a teacher." "Actually, I'm studying social work," Maya had corrected gently. "I want to help families and children who are going through difficult times." Patricia had smiled, but it wasn't warm. "How noble. And your family, what do they do?" Maya felt her stomach tighten. This was the question she had been dreading. "My mom works as a nurse at the county hospital. My dad passed away when I was 12. "I see," Patricia had said, like Maya had just confirmed something she already suspected. "And where did you grow up?" The questions kept coming, each one designed to highlight the differences between Maya's background and Derek's. Where did she go to high school? What kind of neighborhood was it? Did her mother own or rent their house? Did she have any siblings in college? Derek had tried to steer the conversation to other topics, but Patricia was relentless. By the end of the evening, Maya felt like she had been interviewed for a job she was never going to get. On the drive back to campus, Derek had apologized. "She's just protective," he said. "She warm up to you once she gets to know you better." But Maya wasn't so sure. She had seen the way Patricia looked at her, the way she emphasized certain words when she talked. Maya had grown up dealing with people who didn't like her because of the color of her skin, and she recognized the signs. Still, Maya loved Derek, and she believed love could overcome anything. After graduation, Derek proposed with his grandmother's ring during a picnic in the park where they had their first real date. Maya said yes without hesitation. Even though she knew Patricia would never be happy about it, planning their wedding was like walking through a minefield. Patricia had opinions about everything. The church wasn't good enough. The flowers were too expensive. Maya's dress was too simple. The guest list had too many of Maya's friends and not enough of the right kind of people. Every conversation ended with Patricia sighing dramatically and saying things like, "I just want what's best for Derek." The worst fight happened 3 weeks before the wedding. Maya had been at Derek's apartment, addressing invitations, when Patricia showed up, unannounced. She found Maya alone and decided it was time for an honest conversation. "You seem like a nice girl," Patricia had started, sitting down at the kitchen table like she owned the place. "But you have to understand that Derek comes from a certain kind of family. We have expectations, standards." Maya had put down her pen and looked directly at Patricia. "What exactly are you trying to say?" "I'm saying that this marriage is a mistake," Patricia said, her mask of politeness finally slipping. "You two are from completely different worlds. Derek has responsibilities to this family, to the business. He needs a wife who understands that world, who can fit into it properly." "You mean a white wife?" Maya had said quietly. Patricia's face had gotten red. "I mean a wife who won't embarrass him at business dinners. A wife who knows how to behave in society. A wife who can give him children that won't have to deal with ... complications." Maya had felt like she had been slapped. "Complications? You mean children who look like me?" I mean children who will have a difficult time in this world because of how they look, Patricia had said, trying to sound like she was being reasonable. I'm thinking about what's best for everyone involved. When Derek came home and found Maya crying, she told him everything. Derek had been furious with his mother, but Patricia denied saying anything hurtful. She claimed Maya had misunderstood, that she was just trying to be helpful, that Maya was being too sensitive. She's trying to come between us, Maya had told Derek. She wants you to call off the wedding. Derek had held Maya close and promised that nothing his mother said would change how he felt. We're getting married, he said firmly. And my mother will just have to accept it. They did get married in a beautiful ceremony that Patricia attended with a fake smile plastered on her face. Maya's mother cried happy tears, Derek's father gave a polite toast, and Patricia spent the reception complaining to anyone who would listen about the music being too loud and the food being too spicy for the first 2 years of their marriage. Maya tried to make peace with Patricia. She sent birthday cards, invited her to dinner, and included her in holiday plans. But Patricia found fault with everything. Maya's cooking was too ethnic. Her decorating style was too colorful. Her friends were too loud. Her hair was too natural. When Maya got pregnant, she hoped things would change. Surely Patricia would want to be involved in her grandchild's life. But Patricia's behavior got worse, not better. She made comments about the baby's skin color, questioned Maya's ability to be a good mother, and constantly suggested that Derek should find a nanny from a good family to help raise the child properly the day Zoe was born. Maya thought she saw something soften in Patricia's eyes when she held her granddaughter for the first time. Zoe was beautiful, with Derek's eyes and Maya's curls, and for a moment, Maya believed that this perfect little person would bring their family together, but that hope didn't last long. Patricia's love for Zoe came with conditions and constant criticism of Maya's parenting. Nothing Maya did was ever good enough, and Derek, stressed from long hours at work and pressure from his family business, started listening to his mother's complaints more and more often. The divorce papers were signed on a rainy Tuesday in March. Maya sat in her lawyer's office, her hands shaking as she wrote her name for the last time as Mrs. Maya Johnson. 3 years later, she could still remember the sound the pen made scratching. Across the paper, officially ending 8 years of her life, Derek hadn't even shown up to sign the papers himself. His lawyer, a stern man in an expensive suit, had brought Derek's signature on a separate document. Maya had stared at that signature for a long time, remembering all the love letters Derek used to write her in college, all the birthday cards. He had signed with little hearts all the grocery lists he used to leave on their refrigerator with that same handwriting. Mrs. Richardson, her lawyer had said gently, using her maiden name. The custody arrangement gives you every other weekend, and 1 evening per week with Zoe. If you want to fight for more time, we can try, but given the circumstances. Maya had nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The circumstances. That was the polite way of saying that Derek's family had money for better lawyers, and Maya looked guilty because she couldn't prove her innocence. Moving out of the house she had shared with Derek was one of the hardest things Maya had ever done. She had packed her clothes, her books, and a few pieces of furniture into a small moving truck. Everything else stayed behind. The kitchen table where she and Derek used to eat breakfast together, the couch where they watched movies on Sunday. Afternoons, the garden she had planted with her own hands. The worst part was packing Zoe's room. Her 5-year-old daughter had stood in the doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant, asking questions Maya couldn't answer. "Why can't Daddy come live with us in the new place?" Zoe had asked. "Why does Grandma Patricia say mean things about you when she thinks I'm not listening? Why do I have to have 2 bedrooms now?" Maya had knelt down and hugged her daughter tight. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," she had said, "and sometimes families have to live in different places. But I will always love you, and Daddy will always love you too." The apartment Maya found was small but clean. It was in a neighborhood she could afford on her social worker salary, with a good elementary school nearby. Zoe's new room was tiny compared to her old one, but Maya painted it yellow and hung up all of Zoe's artwork to make it feel special. The hardest part about being a single mother wasn't the money, though that was tight. It wasn't the loneliness, though the nights were long. The hardest part was seeing how confused and hurt Zoe was by the whole situation. Derek's visits with Zoe were scheduled and formal now. He would pick her up on Friday evenings and bring her back on Sunday nights. Maya could see that he was trying to be a good father, but something had changed between them. He was distant, polite, like he was afraid of her. Worse than Derek's coldness was Patricia's influence. Maya could tell that Patricia was filling Zoe's head with subtle poison during those weekend visits. Zoe would come home with strange questions and comments that didn't sound like things a child would think of on her own. "Grandma Patricia says you get too emotional sometimes," Zoe said one Sunday evening while Maya was helping her unpack her weekend bag. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Maya had asked carefully. "She says that's why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore. Because you got too emotional and said things that weren't true." Maya had felt her heart break a little more. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her grandmother is lying without turning the child against her own family? "Sometimes people remember things differently," Maya had said finally. "What matters is that both Daddy and I love you very much." As the months turned into years, Maya threw herself into her work. She helped other families navigate divorces, custody battles, and domestic problems. Ironically, her own painful experience made her better at her job. She understood what her clients were going through in a way she never could have before. Maya also went back to school part-time, taking evening classes to get her master's degree in social work. It was exhausting. Working full-time during the day, going to classes at night, and being a single mother, but it gave her a goal to work toward. It made her feel like she was building something positive from the ruins of her old life. Zoe was growing up fast, turning from a confused 5-year-old into a smart, observant 8-year-old. She was doing well in school, had made friends in their new neighborhood, and seemed to be adjusting to having 2 homes. But Maya could tell that her daughter was carrying emotional weight that no child should have to bear. "Mommy," Zoe had said one evening while they were making dinner together, "do you think Daddy still loves you?" Maya had stopped stirring the pasta sauce and looked at her daughter. "Why do you ask that, baby?" "Because sometimes when he looks at me, he gets this sad face, like he's thinking about something that makes him hurt inside. And Grandma Patricia always changes the subject when I talk about you." Maya had pulled Zoe into a hug. Her daughter was too smart for her own good sometimes. "Your daddy and I loved each other very much," Maya had said. "But sometimes love isn't enough to fix all the problems that grown-ups create. What I know for sure is that we both love you more than anything in the world." The phone call that changed everything came on a Wednesday evening in February. Maya was grading papers at her kitchen table while Zoe did homework nearby. When the phone rang, Maya almost didn't answer it because she didn't recognize the number. "Hello, is this Maya Richardson?" The voice was older, with a slight accent that Maya couldn't place. "Yes, this is Maya. Who is this?" "My name is Rosa Morales. I work for the Johnson family. I clean Mrs. Patricia's house." Maya felt her stomach tighten. She remembered Rosa from the old days, a quiet woman who had always been kind to her during family gatherings. "Rosa, is everything okay? Is someone hurt?" "No, no one is hurt. But Mrs. Maya, I need to talk to you. I have something to tell you that I should have told you a long time ago. Something about what really happened to your marriage." Maya's hands started shaking. "What do you mean?" "I can't talk on the phone. Too dangerous. Can you meet me somewhere private?" They agreed to meet at a small diner across town the next evening. Maya spent the entire day wondering what Rosa could possibly have to tell her. Part of her was afraid to hope that there might be some explanation, some missing piece of the puzzle that had destroyed her life. Rosa was already waiting in a corner booth when Maya arrived. She looked older, more tired, and her hands were shaking as she stirred sugar into her coffee. "Mrs. Maya," Rosa said, standing up to hug her. "Thank you for coming." "I wasn't sure you would want to see me. Of course I came." "Rosa, what's this about? You sounded so scared on the phone." Rosa looked around the diner nervously, then leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. "Mrs. Patricia is sick." Her heart is bad, and the doctors say she might not have much time left. Last month she thought she was dying, and she called me to her bedroom. She wanted to confess her sins, she said. She wanted to tell someone the truth before she died. Maya felt her heart start beating faster. What truth? The truth about what she did to break up your marriage. Mrs. Maya, you never had an affair. Mrs. Patricia made it all up. She hired people to fake pictures, to create fake phone records to lie about seeing you with another man. She planned the whole thing because she wanted you out of Derek's life. The diner seemed to spin around Maya. She gripped the edge of the table and tried to breathe. That's impossible, she whispered. Derek saw evidence. There were photos, witnesses. Oh. Fake, Rosa said, tears running down her cheeks. Mrs. Patricia paid a private investigator to create fake evidence. She hired an actor to pose as your lover. She even had fake receipts made from restaurants you never went to. I watched her do it, Mrs. Maya. I watched her destroy your life, and I was too scared to stop her. Maya felt like she might throw up. 3 years. 3 years of believing that her husband had stopped trusting her, stopped loving her because of lies. Why didn't you tell me before? Maya asked, her voice barely audible. I was afraid, Rosa said simply. Mrs. Patricia pays my salary. She threatened to have me deported if I ever told anyone what I knew. I have grandchildren who depend on me. But when she thought she was dying and she told me everything, I realized I couldn't live with this secret anymore. Rosa reached into her purse and pulled out a small digital recorder. I recorded her confession, she said. And I have copies of documents she kept, like receipts for payments to the private investigator. Mrs. Maya, I have proof of everything she did. Maya stared at the recorder like it was a bomb that might explode. Derek needs to know, she said finally. He needs to know what his mother did to us, Rosa nodded. That's why I called you. Mrs. Patricia got better after her scare, and now she's back to her old self. But Derek is getting married again next month. I can't let him start a new marriage based on the lies that destroyed his first one. That night, Maya lay awake staring at the ceiling, holding the recorder Rosa had given her. Everything she thought she knew about the last 3 years was wrong. Derek hadn't stopped loving her because she was unfaithful. He had stopped loving her because his mother had poisoned his mind with carefully crafted lies. The question now was what to do with this information. How do you tell someone that their mother destroyed their life? How do you prove that everything they believed was a lie? But as Maya Listamaya pressed the play button on the small recorder, and Patricia's voice filled the silent church. At first it sounded scratchy and distant like an old phone message, but every word was clear enough to understand. Rosa, I need to tell you something before I die, Patricia's recorded voice said. Something I've never told anyone. I did a terrible thing to my son and his wife. I destroyed their marriage on purpose. The entire church seemed to hold its breath. Derek's face went completely white, and he grabbed onto the altar to steady himself. Jennifer, still in her wedding dress, looked back and forth between Derek and Maya with confusion and growing horror. I couldn't stand that boy marrying a black woman, Patricia's voice continued from the recorder. What would people think? What would happen to our family's reputation? So I decided to get rid of her myself. Patricia, sitting in the front pew, jumped to her feet. Turn that thing off, she screamed. This is ridiculous. That's not my voice. This woman has lost her mind. But her voice was shaking, and everyone in the church could hear that the voice on the recording was definitely hers. Maya kept the recorder playing, even though her hands were trembling. I hired a private investigator, Patricia's recorded confession continued. A man named Tony who used to work for the police. I paid him $15,000 to create fake evidence that Maya was cheating on Derek. Derek made a sound like someone had punched him in the stomach. He turned to look at his mother, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Tony found an actor, some young man who needed money, the recording went on. I paid him $500 to pose for photographs with Maya. We followed her around for weeks, taking pictures of her going about her normal day. Then Tony used computer software to put the actor into the photos. It looked like Maya was meeting this man for dates. Mom, Derek whispered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. Tell me this isn't true. Patricia's face was red with anger and panic. Derek, you can't believe this nonsense. This woman is desperate. She's making up lies to try to win you back. But Maya wasn't finished. She had brought more than just the recording. She nodded to Zoe, who opened the manila envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs and documents. Rosa saved copies of everything. Maya said, her voice stronger now. The receipts for payments to the private investigator. The fake phone records your mother had created. Even the contract she signed with the actor. Maya held up a photograph that showed Patricia handing a thick envelope to a man in a coffee shop. Rosa took this picture herself in case she ever needed proof of what she witnessed. The church erupted in shocked murmurs. People were turning to each other, whispering and pointing. Some of Derek's friends looked angry. Some of Maya's old co-workers, who had been invited to the original wedding years ago and remembered her, looked like they wanted to applaud. Derek was staring at the photograph like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The phone records, he said slowly. You showed me phone records that proved Maya was calling another man. Patricia tried one more time to deny everything. Those records were real. I got them from the phone company. Rosa stood up from the back of the church. Maya had asked her to come, knowing that Patricia might try to lie her way out of everything. The elderly housekeeper walked slowly down the aisle, her head held high despite her obvious fear. Mrs. Patricia, Rosa said in her quiet voice that somehow carried clearly through the church. I've worked in your house for 15 years. I have listened to your phone calls, I have seen your papers, I know what you did. Patricia's face went from red to pale in seconds. Rosa, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a housekeeper. No one is going to believe you over me. Rosa reached into her purse and pulled out her own stack of papers. I have copies of the checks you wrote to Tony Martinez, the private investigator. I have the contract you signed with the actor. I have photographs of you meeting with these people. And I have more recordings. Rosa pulled out a second recorder, newer than the one Maya had been using. Mrs. Patricia, you forgot that I clean your office every week. You forgot that I empty your trash cans and organize your papers. For 3 years, I have been collecting evidence of what you did because I knew someday the truth would need to come out. Derek turned to Jennifer, who was standing frozen in her wedding dress. Jennifer, I'm so sorry. I need to understand what happened. I need to know the truth about my first marriage before I can marry you. Jennifer looked at Derek with tears in her eyes. The truth? The truth is that you divorced your wife and abandoned your daughter because your mother lied to you. The truth is that you never even gave Mia a chance to defend herself. Derek's best man, his brother Kevin, stepped forward. Derek, think about it. Did Maya ever act like someone who was cheating? Did she ever give you any real reason not to trust her? Derek closed his eyes and seemed to be thinking back through his memories. No, he said quietly. She always told me where she was going. She never hid her phone or acted suspicious. When I accused her, she seemed genuinely shocked and hurt. Because she was innocent, Rosa said firmly. Mrs. Mann never cheated on you. She loved you and your daughter more than anything in the world. Maya felt tears running down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of relief. After 3 years of carrying the weight of being blamed for something she didn't do, the truth was finally coming out. Patricia made one last desperate attempt to control the situation. Even if any of this were true, she said, I was protecting my son, I was protecting our family. That woman would have ruined Derek's life. Derek looked at his mother like he was seeing her for the first time. Ruined my life? Maya was the best thing that ever happened to me. She made me a better person. She gave me a beautiful daughter. And you destroyed all of that because you couldn't accept that I loved someone who didn't look like you. The church was completely silent now, except for Patricia's heavy breathing and the sound of people shifting in their seats. Even Jennifer's bridesmaids looked shocked and uncomfortable. Zoe, who had been standing quietly next to Maya through all of this, suddenly spoke up in her clear, brave voice. Grandma Patricia told me that Mommy was a bad person. She said that's why you didn't live with us anymore. But Mommy isn't bad. Mommy takes care of me and helps other people and never says mean things about you, even when she's sad. Derek knelt down to Zoe's eye level. You're right, sweetheart. Your mommy isn't bad. Your mommy is a wonderful person, and I made a terrible mistake. He looked up at Maya, his eyes full of tears. Maya, I don't know how to apologize for this. I don't know how to make up for 3 years of believing lies instead of trusting the woman I married. Patricia, seeing that she had lost control of the situation completely, tried to leave the church. But several of Derek's cousins blocked her path. One of them, a woman named Lisa, who had always been kind to Maya, spoke up loudly. Patricia, you're not going anywhere until you explain yourself. You destroyed a marriage and kept a grandfather from knowing his granddaughter. You owe everyone in this church an explanation? Patricia looked around the church and saw that every face was turned against her. Even her own sister, who had flown in from another state for the wedding, was looking at her with disgust. I did what I thought was best, Patricia said weakly. I was trying to protect my family's future. You were trying to protect your own prejudices, Derek said, standing up and facing his mother. You couldn't stand that I married a black woman, so you decided to destroy her life and mine. Jennifer slowly removed her wedding ring and placed it on the altar. I can't marry you today, Derek, she said quietly. Not like this. You need to figure out your life and make things right with your family before you can make promises to someone new. Derek nodded, looking defeated but also somehow relieved. You're right. I have a lot of damage to undo. The church began to empty as people filed out, some stopping to hug Maya or shake Rosa's hand. Patricia's friends avoided looking at anyone as they hurried toward the exit. Derek's friends looked angry and ashamed that they had believed the lies for so long. When the church was nearly empty, Derek approached Maya one more time. What happens now? He asked. Maya looked at her daughter, who was holding both her hands. And Derek's bringing them together. Now, Maya said, we figure out how to be a family again. Not the same family we were before, but maybe something better. Something built on truth instead of lies. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Maya sat in Dr. Chun's office watching Derek play blocks with Zoe on the carpet. The family therapy sessions had been Derek's idea, and Maya had agreed, though she wasn't sure at first if it would help or just make things more complicated. How are you feeling about spending more time with your dad? Dr. Chun asked Zoe gently. Zoe looked up from the tower she was building with Derek. It's good. Daddy says he's sorry for not believing Mommy. He says Grandma Patricia was sick in her heart and did bad things. Derek's face still showed pain whenever Zoe talked about the lost years. Maya could see him struggling with guilt every time their daughter mentioned something he had missed. A school play, a loose tooth, a nightmare that needed comforting. The day after the church confrontation had been chaos. Derek had called Maya 3 times before breakfast, asking if they could talk. Jennifer had left town to stay with her sister, taking all her wedding gifts with her. Patricia had been taken to the hospital after having what the doctors called a panic attack, though Maya suspected it was more like a complete breakdown from being exposed. I need to understand everything, Derek had said when he came to Maya's apartment that first time. I need to know what I missed, what I put you through, what I did to our daughter. Maya had made coffee with shaking hands while Zoe showed Derek around their small apartment. It was strange having him in her space, seeing how different their lives had become. Derek looked around at Maya's nursing school certificates on the wall, Zoe's artwork covering the refrigerator, the small but cozy life they had built without him. You went back to school, he said, looking at her master's degree diploma. I had to do something with all the pain, Maya replied. I figured if I was going to hurt anyway, I might as well use it to help other people. Derek had sat at her kitchen table, the same one she had bought secondhand after moving out of their house, and cried. Not just tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere buried inside him. I threw away everything, he said between sobs. I threw away my marriage, my family, my daughter's childhood, and for what? Because I believed. My mother over my wife. Maya had wanted to comfort him, but she wasn't ready for that yet. The betrayal was still too fresh, the hurt too deep. Instead, she had handed him tissues and let him cry. The question is, Maya had said finally, what do we do now? That conversation had led to others. Slowly, carefully, like people walking. On broken glass, Maya and Derek began to rebuild some kind of relationship. Not the marriage they used to have, that was gone forever, but something new. Something that put Zoe first. Derek had moved out of the house he shared with Jennifer and into a small apartment closer to Maya and Zoe. He started picking Zoe up from school twice a week and spending Saturday afternoons with her. At first, these visits were awkward and formal, but gradually they became more natural. "Daddy doesn't know how to braid hair yet," Zoe announced one Saturday evening when Derek brought her home. "But he's learning, and he makes really good pancakes." Maya had smiled, remembering how Derek used to make pancakes for her on Sunday mornings when they were married. Some things didn't change, even when everything else fell apart. The hardest part was dealing with Patricia. After her hospital stay, she had tried to contact Derek several times, wanting to explain her side of the story. Derek had refused to see her or take her calls. His father, Robert, who had been traveling on business during the wedding disaster, came home to find his wife's lies exposed and his family in ruins. "I had no idea," Robert told Derek during one of their difficult conversations. "Your mother told me Maya had cheated, and I believed her. I should have asked more questions." Robert filed for divorce from Patricia 2 months after the truth came out. He also helped Derek hire a lawyer to pursue legal action against Patricia for fraud and emotional distress. The private investigator she had hired, Tony Martinez, was arrested for creating false evidence. The actor who had posed in the fake photographs came forward and admitted what he had done, saying he needed the money but regretted his part in destroying a family. Rosa kept her job with the family, but now she worked for Robert instead of Patricia. Patricia moved to another state to live with her sister, away from the shame and anger she had created. "I know she's sick," Derek said during one therapy session. "I know her prejudice and need to control everything came from her own insecurities. But I can't forgive her. Maybe someday, but not now." Dr. Chun nodded. "Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone else. It's something you do for yourself when you're ready." Maya was working on forgiveness too, but it was complicated. She had to forgive Derek for not trusting her, for believing his mother's lies, for putting her through 3 years of hell. But she also had to forgive herself for not fighting harder, for not demanding that Derek listen to her side of the story. "I keep wondering what would have happened if I had been stronger," Maya said during one session. "What if I had insisted on taking a lie detector test? What if I had hired my own investigator?" "You were dealing with an elaborate fraud, Doctor," Hyun reminded her. "Patricia spent months and thousands of dollars creating evidence against you. You couldn't have known what you were up against." The legal case against Patricia made the local news. The story of a mother who destroyed her sons. Marriage because of racist beliefs sparked conversations about family manipulation and the damage that prejudice could cause. Maya received dozens of messages from other women who had experienced similar situations with their in-laws. One woman wrote, "My husband's mother convinced him I was only with him for his money. We divorced, and it took 5 years for him to realize she was lying. By then I had remarried. Thank you for fighting for the truth." Another wrote, "My mother-in-law tried to have me deported because she didn't want her son married to an immigrant. Reading your story gave me courage to tell my husband what really happened." Maya realized that their story was bigger than just their family. It was about what happened when people let fear and prejudice control their actions. Derek started going to individual therapy too, working through his guilt and trying to understand how he had been manipulated for so long. He also began educating himself about racism and unconscious bias, reading books and attending workshops. "I always thought I wasn't racist because I married you," he told Maya one day. "But I didn't protect you from my mother's racism. I didn't even recognize it for what it was." Maya appreciated his efforts, but she was also realistic about what they meant. "Knowing better doesn't undo the damage," she said, "but it's a start." As the months passed, Maya watched Derek slowly rebuild his relationship with Zoe. They went to the zoo, painted pictures together, and Derek helped with homework. He learned about her friends at school, her favorite foods, her fears and dreams. "Daddy, why did Grandma Patricia do those bad things?" Zoe asked one day while they were all having dinner together at Maya's apartment. Derek looked at Maya, then back at their daughter. "Sometimes people get scared when things are different from what they expect. Grandma Patricia was scared of change, and she made very bad choices because of that fear. Is that why you believed her instead of Mommy?" Derek's voice was quiet when he answered, "Yes, sweetheart, I made a bad choice too. I should have trusted your mommy, and I'm sorry I didn't." Zoe nodded seriously, then went back to eating her chicken nuggets. Children, Maya thought, were sometimes better at accepting apologies than adults. Maya had started dating again, cautiously. A man named David, who taught at Zoe's school, had asked her to coffee several times before she finally said yes. Derek had been surprisingly supportive when she told him. "You deserve to be happy," he said. "You deserve someone who will trust you and protect you the way I should have." Maya wasn't ready for anything serious yet, but she was learning to believe that she could have a future that included love and trust again. Derek had also started dating a woman named Lisa who worked at the library. Maya felt a twist of something. Not jealousy exactly, but sadness for what they had lost, when Zoe mentioned that Lisa was teaching her how to knit. "Are you okay with Daddy having a girlfriend?" Maya asked Zoe one evening. "I guess so," Zoe said. "She's nice. But I told her that you're my mommy and nothing will change that." Maya hugged her daughter tight. "That's exactly right." 1 year after the wedding confrontation, Maya stood in the same church where everything had changed. This time she was there for Zoe's school choir performance. Derek sat beside her in the pew, and for a moment they looked like any other divorced couple, co-parenting their child. "Thank you," Derek said quietly while they watched Zoe sing. "For what?" "For not giving up on the truth. For fighting for our daughter to know who her father really is. For giving me a chance to be better." Maya looked at Derek, seeing the man she had once loved, but also recognizing how much they had both changed. "We're not the same people we were," she said. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe we needed to break apart to learn how to be whole." After the performance, the three of them went out for ice cream, laughing as Zoe told them about her friend who had forgotten the words to the song and just hummed loudly instead. Maya realized that this was what healing looked like. Not a return to what was lost, but the creation of something new. N.